Hey there, everybody, and welcome to day one of Math Online Learning. I'm really excited to get started. I hope you guys are excited as well. This is the first video lesson that I'm able to do, so I'm eagerly anticipating how it's going to go. I'm looking forward to any feedback that you guys have for me as well. I've got my camera ready to roll. I've got my computer whiteboard. I got my sweatpants on and my purple pen all ready to go. So it's time to get started and let's jump on into it. So what we're going to be covering today, and we're transitioning into a new topic with topic 6 in percents. Now, percents isn't that different than what we've actually already dealt with recently with ratios and rates. So this is an excellent topic to transition to, and hopefully through this video and the other lessons that we'll do, you'll see how it ties in to what we did with ratios and rates in topic 5. So today's going to be the introduction to percent. Now, just the breakdown of the word percent, as I try to underline words, I'll do my best. So the word percent, I'm going to draw a little arrow over here. Okay. The word per, as we talked about, when we're talking about ratios, it means 1. Okay. In this case, since we're talking about the word per means out of. Okay. And the word cent actually means the number 100. So what this really breaks down to, this word means out of 100. Okay, and we see this word cent pop up a lot. Think about when you're talking about money and we say there's 1 cent. That means that there's 1 penny out of 100 total pennies. Okay, and when we talk about the word century, I'll do my best writing it here. Century. Okay, you guys may know that a century is 100 years. Okay. And how we get the 100 words, the word cent is right there. That really means century, just 100 years. So that's why we know that it's 100. So percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100. So any number out of 100, we can turn that into a percent. And we have our percent symbol right there. And we can write percent as a fraction with the denominator of 100. And that's what we're going to do right today. So with this, we have 7 out of 10 people prefer bright white toothpaste. It's important to note here that we have 7 out of 10. This is a ratio. So we can go ahead and create a ratio from this, and we're going to write it as a fraction ratio, which is what we've been doing lately. So we have 7 out of 10 people who prefer the bright white toothpaste. Huh? Well, we want to go from this to a percent. Well, the only way we can do that right now is to convert this ratio, or you can say fraction, to an equivalent ratio or an equivalent fraction where the denominator is going to be 100, because we can create any percent that we want as long as the denominator is 100. Okay. So just like we've done with our equivalent ratios and rates recently, we want to create our arches. We want to know how we're going to go from 10 to 100. I'm going to create the arch up here as well. How are we going to go from 10 to 100? Well, some of you might be able to do that and remember that in the top of your head. Some of you might not, and that's where you might need a calculator to come into play. So if you're not certain, you can always take your second number and divide it by your first term, your second term by your first term. So 100, you have divided by 10 is 10. So we know that the number that we need to multiply by is going to be 10. Because 10 times 10 will equal 100. And just like we did with other ratios and rates, whatever we multiply or divide the denominator by, we are also going to have to do to the numerator. So we're going to have to multiply the 7 by 10 as well. So 7 times 10, some of you might be able to do that in your head, and that's fine. Some of you might need the calculator, but 7 times 10 is going to get us 70. Well, we're still not quite done yet because we don't have a percent, but this right here is going to help us write the percent now. Because just to go from the fraction or the ratio to percent, all we have to do now is take our part, which is our numerator, and write it as a percent. So we have 70%. And this is how we write it now. That symbol there looks a little bit different than my symbol, but it's the same symbol. You can just put dots, or you can put little zeros, little circles there on either side of the slash. So this whole fraction ratio we are calling is our part over our whole, and the whole being the 100%. So our part is what our percent is going to be, or how much out of 100 this is, over the whole, which is 100. So when we would say this, we would say 70 out of 100, or 70%. Going back to here, we now know that 7 out of 10 people refers to 70%. So really, we can now say that 70%, or how we report our final answer, 70% of people, I will do my best to write with my mouse, not bad, 70% of people prefer, and I'm going to abbreviate bright white, I'm going to put BW. 70% of people prefer bright white toothpaste, BWT. Okay, let's look at a couple other examples. So we can look at a grid as well, and this is a 10 by 10 grid. How we know it's a 10 by 10 is we can count down. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 all the way down. And we can do the same thing across, and there's 10 across. So since this is a 10 by 10, there's 100 total squares in here. A 10 by 10 grid means 100 total squares. So we can create a ratio from this image. So since there's a total of 100, our denominator is going to be 100, and that makes it nice and simple for us to make a percent. Then we want to know what is the percent of the shaded region. Okay, we could also look at the percent of the unshaded region, which we'll do in a second. So the percent of the shaded region, okay, well, since we know that it's 10 down, okay, we can count this whole column as 10. So there's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. So there's 70 out of 100, or which equals 70%. And that's how we can write it. What about the percent of the unshaded region though? Well, it's still out of 100 because it's a 100 grid as we talked about. But how many columns are unshaded? So we can go backwards to one. There's one whole column, so that's 10, 20, and 30. So that is 30 out of 100, or, well, that's a big old 3, or 30%. Okay. Moving on. So we can also look at percent on a number line. Okay. Now, the last number here that's going to be in line with one another, this is our 100%. So both of these numbers represent the whole, or the 100%. And each one of these would represent a different percent, where in the very end, the left, where the zeros are, would represent the 0% part of this. So then we can compare the number lines. Well, to go from 10 to 100, we would have to multiply by 10. And that would be the case with each one of these intervals, or each one of these tick marks. So to go from, this would be 9, to go from 9 down to 90, we would have to multiply by 10. And with our target number here, the 7 and 70, that's also true going by 10. We can then write this in a ratio, as we talked about. To go from 10 to 100, you would have to multiply by 10. That means to go from 7 to 70, you would have to multiply by 10. That gets you 70%. Let's take a look at another model. So Jane won 9 out of the 10 video games. It's important to try to identify a ratio in every one of these problems that you could write. So we have 9 out of the 10 video games she won that she played. So we want to know what percent, so we want to know what out of 100 of the video games did Jane win. So as you can see, we have our model, and you could count there are 10 total squares here. And 9 of them are shaded, representing the 9 of the 10 games she won. So we can write, my 9s are really rough, guys. So we can write the 9 out of 10 as a ratio and make an equivalent ratio where our whole goes from 10 to 100 as the denominator. So this is our whole. Once again, to go from 10 to 100, we're going to put our arch, and we would have to multiply that by 10. And whatever we do to the denominator, we also must do to the numerator now. So 9 times 10 is going to get us 90. So we have a 90 out of 100. Now we want to write that as a percent. It would be 90%, or 90 out of 100. So Jane won 90% of the video games that she played. Let's keep on going. So we have each line segment that represents 100%, but the line segments are not the same length. So we have one where the whole is 2, 100% is 2, and another where the whole 100% is 4. Okay? To go with this, we want to figure out what percent is 1 inch in both of these. So this first one, we're going to write the part, which in this case is 1, as our numerator, and the whole, which is 2, because the whole is the 100%, in this case is 2. And we want to make that equivalent, or out of 100 again. Well, how are we going to go from 2 to 100? Or what would we multiply 2 by to get 100? You need your calculator out. You can do this. Or if you know that 2 times 50 is 100, then you would know that you need to multiply each one by 50. So you have to multiply your numerator by 50 as well. 1 times 50 is 50, or 50%. So in this case, the 1 represents 50%. What about in this case below? So once again, we still want to know how the 1 inch is relating to the whole. Well, now the whole is changed to 4. So we're still going to write a ratio of 1 over 4, or part over the whole. And we still want to know how much it is out of 100. Well, now how are we getting from 4 to 100? So again, you can use your calculator to do 100 divided by 4. That would give us 25. So 4 times 25 is 100. We also got to do that to the numerator. We know that 1 multiplied by 25 is 25. So the 1 is representing 25 out of 100, or 25%. So notice, even though that we were talking about the same number, 1 inch, how it's going to change, its percentage is going to change depending on what the whole is. In this case, we had a smaller whole, which was 2 inches. So 1 inch had a greater percentage, or a greater value in that whole. Whereas in this case, the whole was 4 inches. So the 1 was not as significant of a percent. In that case, it was only representing 25% of the actual whole 100%. We'll look at a couple more examples here. So in your class, 2 out of every 5 students are wearing braces. So we can create this ratio, and we want to know what percent of the students in your class wear braces. So we have 2 out of 5, and we want to know the percent, meaning we want to know how much out of 100. Well, we want to know how we get from 5 to 100. Once again, you could divide 100 by 5, and that would get you 20. So the constant that we're going to multiply each of the numerator and denominator by is 20. 2 times 20 would get you 40 out of 100, which would be 40%. So that means 40% of the students in your class wear braces. Look at one more here. At your last soccer game, 15 out of 20 spectators wore sunglasses, and we want to know the percent, or out of 100. So 15 out of 20 So 15 out of 20 spectators wore the sunglasses. So you multiply each one by 5, get 75 out of 100, which would be 7.